Oh, welcome. Hello and welcome. We are so glad that you've joined us today for supporting youth with mental health struggles as we explore this topic together. My name is Nikki Straza. I am the Youth and Family Engagement Lead at Woodview Mental Health and Autism Services. And with me is my good friend, Kelly.
Hey, I'm Kelly Bryant. I am a child and youth worker here at Woodview. I've been with Woodview for over 20 years, helping families and parents navigate mental health and all the challenges that come with that. Thank you so much for having us. So today we would like to talk about mental health and how we can best support the families and the children who in your life who may be struggling. And I'd like to start by talking about, the differences between mental health and physical health. And, one thing that I've noticed over the years is we tend to sometimes treat those two things very differently. However, I'd like to argue that they are very similar. So, for instance, when somebody has a broken leg, what do? We go to the doctors, we put on a cast, we might, use crutches. We put the scaffolding up to help manage that ailment. When there's a mental health disorder, it's not as visible. We can't see it in the same way, and so we tend to treat it differently. In my personal experience, I have a daughter who is going to be 18 shortly, and when she was 1, she was diagnosed with diabetes. Not once did anybody say to me, oh, insulin, you're going to give her insulin? There's lots of things that about insulin that could harm her. If she tries really hard, don't you think maybe we could manage her blood sugar? Have you thought about the effects of giving her insulin for the rest of her life and what that might be doing to her? Nobody said that. It was supported, it was acknowledged, it was accepted and celebrated that there was something that we could do to help her live a normal, happy life. And so I'd like to just start off by challenging the notion of physical health and mental health, and that there aren't things that we can't do in a supportive way to support somebody who may be struggling with mental health. The other thing I'd like to talk about is with mental health, because there's not often, you can't see the broken leg, you can't see the cast, you don't see the insulin pump. What we often see are behaviors. And, I'd like to think of behavior as a language, communication used when words fail. So when we see behaviors that may be challenging or behaviors that are difficult or getting bigger, I'd like to look at that as a way that our loved ones are communicating with us, something that might not be going right for them, something they may be struggling with.
So if we take a look at some of the complications and the ways that we kind of look at these blurry lines, it's helpful to kind of know what to look for. Now, any of us who've had any experience with teenagers know that there are a lot of different changes that our teenagers are going through as they, mature through adolescence, and some of them are just very typical for that adolescent stage. And but it's the changes in behavior, especially when those changes last for a longer time, that we really want to pay attention to. So I wanted to highlight kind of two kind of lists of categories that we can pay attention to. The first one is simply changes that need additional family support. So start paying attention to what's happening. And if you really notice a lot of lethargy or low energy, feelings of worry or fear, confusion or difficulty concentrating, vocalized or even visual feelings of guilt. So that body language that really communicates there's something not quite right, anxiousness, increased moodiness, or that isolating behavior, preferring to be alone. Some of those are normal behaviors, but some of those are not normal for our particular child. And you probably know your child, grandchild, the young people in your life, and you have an idea of what is a baseline behavior, what is kind of typical for them in that everyday life. And when you start to notice these changes, it's important to pay attention and maybe reach out for more connection and begin to listen a little closer. Because if we can catch it before it, really escalates, we have a lot better chance of it, of bringing resolution and help into it. Now, sometimes we aren't connected, or we miss those early signs, or those early signs are hidden. So looking for another level of help where we may actually need to seek, additional support, whether it be at Woodview or St. Leonard's or at the hospital. Some of those behaviors would be being disengaged and really withdrawing from friends or activities. So it's typical for kids to kind of want to withdraw and have some of their alone time. But when they want to withdraw from their friends and those social activities, that's a real clue, because adolescence is marked by those friend spheres. And so that is not a really, that's a really good sign that it's time to intervene and look at something more seriously. Significant changes in sleeping or eating patterns that last for more than 2 weeks is something to take seriously. Extreme mood changes, especially when it seems to be prolonged or seems to be worsening. Obsessive worry or rumination. All right. So it's not just the every now and then that kind of normal anxiety that comes because a situation is coming up and then it subsides. But when it becomes kind of all consuming, that becomes a real thing to pay attention to. Panic attacks, that freeze response when things get anxious, that really demobilizes and causes them to almost become incapable of being able to really function. That is something to really take seriously. Self-harm, when they're harming themselves. And this, unfortunately, is something that they will work really, really hard to hide. And so paying attention and watching for long sleeves in the summer and just some of that interesting thing may give you clues to what might be happening. And of course, suicidal thoughts or comments. And sometimes they come as a little bit of sarcasm or passive aggressive comments that are kind of like a fishing line that they throw out as a sign of help to see if anybody's noticing. And those suicidal thoughts or comments are something to take very seriously and to never dismiss or overlook. And so those are just a few things that we can be on the look for. And we're going to explore some ways to, investigate those in a really relational way.
So early intervention is important, and we're going to talk about different ways that we can do that. When we talk about the list before, there's things on that list on both sides that we can all look at and say, wow, you know what? I can see some things like that in the loved one that I love, but I don't know if that would be a problem. And I would like to just highlight one of the things that Nikki touched on is your loved ones best. So trust that intuition. If something's telling you, what, this is a normal age and growth, then you want to definitely make sure that you always focus on connection. And, we don't want anybody to panic. And also being aware of the signs and looking for if things get bigger. And we'll go on to talk about how to support if you're noticing these signs and then what to do, what those first steps are. So, building this connection with our loved ones, really, there is no wrong time to start building a solid connection. If it's something that has happened since they were little and, you've got this beautiful connection that's grown and weathered ages and stages, continuing to spend time investing in that. If there's times that maybe you have grown apart or you don't see as often, to reinvest in that time and that connection is always going to be worth it for everybody. Um, you know, asking for help, and we will go through again, like I said, some steps for doing that. I feel like one of the first things would be talking during that connection, talking to your loved one and asking what they need, um, and being consistently available. So that is, when we talk about consistent, being consistently available and taking care of yourself as 2 points, we do want to make sure that we're setting boundaries for ourselves, that we are being able to connect and also able to take care of ourselves and have our boundaries when we need them, and making sure that we honor that so that when we do take care of ourselves, we are better able to care for others. Um, and when we are available for our loved one, we want to make sure. So there's research that says, when we're spending this quality time, to take 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday and devote that time to our loved one, although that is great to be able to do, we all don't often have all that time to do that consistently. But what the research shows is when our loved one comes to us to tell us something, ask us something, or show us something, we stop what we're doing and totally pay attention. So that might look like putting our phone down, squaring our shoulders, looking our loved one in the eye and really hearing them. The research says that it only takes, sometimes 2 to maybe 5 minutes of that connection to build those strong, solid connections. So I feel like that makes it a little more doable than trying to etch in time. And then we have kids that, maybe they're busy at that time, or it's too much time for them, or you're trying to fit it in at a time that, may not work, so it gets pushed off. When we get that phone call, when we get that one-to-one connection, when we get that opportunity and they're coming to us, that we really truly spend those few minutes connecting when they're asked, and the importance of that.
So it's one of those things where when it comes to early intervention, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why we're so excited to be able to bring these insights to you so that we're more informed. And I recognize in my own journey that I wish I had known some of this information earlier on. My eldest went through a real journey of depression and self-harm. And I didn't know the signs, and I didn't know to ask for help. And I was embarrassed to ask for help, honestly. And it was a very awkward thing. And I think I secretly hoped that it was just a phase. But it came to be very evident that it wasn't just a phase when my daughter cut her arm from wrist to elbow significantly and ended up in the hospital. And she had hidden her self-harm up until that point so well. And it was so disheartening, and it ended up putting us right into the throes of crisis. And I had a decent relationship with my daughter, I thought. But there were a lot of things that I learned afterwards about how to build connection, how to listen better, and stuff that I would love to have known. And I love that we get to talk about this and be able to share this information, because thankfully in our story, even at that place of crisis, it wasn't too late. And now my eldest is 25 years old. We have a powerful connection. And even though her mental health ebbs and flows, there is a strong foundation. I know the questions to ask, and I know how to offer help and support and to listen. And so early intervention, if we can do it, makes a huge difference. And Kelly, I really appreciate, because the background that you have in being a child and youth worker really prepared you for that earlier intervention. And how did that show up in your family?
Yeah, so like I had said, I have an almost 18-year-old who was diagnosed with diabetes at 15 months. So there's a lot, I don't know how familiar you are, but with that disease, there is a lot of mental load that comes with that, and a lot of support that she needed at a very young age to help manage her physical health to keep her safe, and it really took a toll on her mental health. And working in this field from before she was born, it was not something that I noticed right away was offered in the medical help that she was being offered, which was tremendous. I have very much loved the help that she and support she has gotten for her physical health. And I took on right away the job of caring for her mental health because I saw the load that it created. And sure enough, it caused a lot of anxiety. And I don't know what came first. Was she, you know, typically a little more anxious, or did diabetes contribute to that? I don't know. But what I do know is over the years, as she grew, there were moments that this anxiety showed up for her, and sometimes in ways that were small and we could talk through, and sometimes in ways that were bigger. And because of that connection, and because of knowing and looking for the signs, I was able to intervene. And it's not a straight line. You know, there's the ups and downs and the hills and valleys. And I've been able to intervene and ask the questions and follow her lead and listen to her words and her behaviors in order to help assist her asking for more help. So that being the doctor, that being a therapist, that being medication. In her particular situation, we've gone all three routes over the years, and at different things at different times at different points. And I truly believe it's a journey that will continue throughout her life. And yeah, having that hat on for myself has definitely helped me to look for and help her advocate for herself as she's becoming an adult, for that support that she needs, and normalizing it, right? Which is another big thing when we go back to talking about physical and mental health. The diabetes part is so normalized that she needs the support, and being there to help normalize the fact that we all struggle at times. We all have, you know, it's not, I can't say, well, I'm always in great physical health. No, sometimes I'm doing better than others, and the same with mental health. And I feel like that is a normal path that we all take, and asking for help and looking at signs and symptoms when we need to do that is part of the journey of life.
Thanks, Kelly. So we want to kind of tackle looking at supports in two different ways. One, supporting that youth or young person or child in your family directly, depending what your role is in their lives, you may have these opportunities. But we also want to explore what it looks like to support the family and the caregivers of these young people, because there's a role that we can play there as well. And so in supporting our young people directly, what our goal is to build that network around them of trusted adults that they can come to and feel safe with. And we want them to feel safe, we want them to feel supported, and we want them to have some skills to be able to develop and grow in their care of themselves. And so as we talk about safety, when we are recognizing some of those, more significant elements, whether it be self-harm or whether it be panic attacks or suicide ideation, it's going to be really important to prioritize their safety. Do you know where they are and who they're with? Have you made sure that medications and sharp things are out of reach for them? Do you have the crisis phone number in your phone? Have you helped them put it in theirs? Simple things that can be really helpful when you have a vulnerable young person in your home or in your care. But the one significant piece is to believe the young person. Being careful not to dismiss or minimize or invalidate their emotions. If they are expressing anxiety or fear or making suggestions towards not caring themselves or for themselves or not having a reason to live or what's the point, listen to them. hear them and believe them. Take those things seriously and find ways to bring them supports and get them the help that they need, because above all else, we want to keep them safe and keep them alive so that we can work through those things together. And that is so critical. And one of the things that I know, the mistakes I made, was recognizing, as my young person was cutting her arm and, thinking about suicide, I was petrified to raise the subject. I was petrified to ask her about it, because in my mind, I didn't want to put the idea in her head. But the truth of the matter is, the idea was already in her head and the plan was already in her head. And one of the things I've learned in working with mental health and in taking assist training is how important this safety factor is. And I have learned that it is so important, if there's a young person in your life, a loved one, who is making commentary about ending your life, or it's not worth being here, ask them directly, are you having thoughts about suicide? It's a hard question, but it's actually a question that really opens them up to having to have an answer and to getting help. And it's so effective. And so it's a hard one, but a valuable one in keeping our young people safe. And it's worth the ask, because if they aren't, they will probably tell you no. But if they are, they will have a hard time lying to you. And that's really great. So it's good to have these tools. So Kelly, how can we support our young person?
Yeah, so one of the ways is simply just asking. So when we're looking at connection and sitting with our young person and them, we talked prior to just being the one there listening to them, it might be a good time to ask, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help? So if we're looking at potentially, so let's use a scenario that you're sitting with, a loved one, a young, son or grandson. And, he says to you, oh, I'm a loser at school and nobody likes me. Our first response is to say, no, you're not. I don't think so. I love you so much. Or calling the school and trying to figure out what's going on there. You want to fix the problem. You want to support it. You want to make that go away. So painful to hear, our young child say that, express this painful scenario that they're at school and they feel so alone and isolated. And yet, I want to resist that a little bit, because if just listening is what is really important, or, if we want to empathize and validate that scenario, if I said, I'm a loser at school and nobody likes me, and the answer was, no, you're not. Well, we love you. What that does is it kind of rips me out of that feeling in that scenario. And if I answered something like, I can understand why that would be really hard, because that must make you feel really mad and kind of embarrassed because everyone's avoiding you and not talking to you. And because you might be wondering, what's wrong with me? When I react and respond in an empathetic way and really truly dig into why he might be feeling that way, in that moment, when I respond with what he may be feeling and 3 reasons why, what that does is it truly validates. In that moment, he's like, she gets it. She hears me. She understands. And what that happens to our nervous system is it releases the tension. And we're able to, right? Whereas the answer of, no, you're not, all of a sudden we're out of that scenario. We don't have the permission to feel and process. And so I feel like that's a very good way to help support a loved one in your life that may come to you with a hard feeling or a hard question. Then at that point, after you're able to really truly feel with them their feelings and express to them. And let me tell you, with my 3 teenage girls, there's times that I've said, "Oh, I can understand why you might be feeling so sad." The answer is sometimes, "No, I'm not. I'm not feeling sad. I'm frustrated." Great, that's great information. If I'm guessing a feeling and it's wrong, they're going to tell me, and they're not shy about doing that. And then I can, oh, it helps deepen my understanding. They're not sad, they're frustrated. That's a different feeling that now we can look at and sit with for a few minutes until maybe there is an offer at that point to help. And maybe they want help solving it, and maybe they don't. Maybe, just being the person listening is helpful enough. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit in supporting our loved one, and just change gears a little bit, is, when we're around them and we're asking them to do something, I want to shift our thinking to look at maybe asking them to do something, and are they not doing it because they can't do it or because they won't do it? And I want to pair that a little bit with, like, potentially arthritis. So every day I get dressed, I have to do up my zipper. Some days my arthritis is flaring up and I cannot. I would love to do up my zipper on my own. I want to just get dressed and move on with my day. And I want to do up my zipper, but I cannot. I physically cannot because my arthritis is flaring up. So when you're asking your loved one to do a task, or to come to a family event, or to clean up their room, or to do a task, is it because they won't do it? Are they being, defiant? Are they refusing? Or is it something that they cannot do in that moment? So I just want to introduce the idea of shifting that thinking to potentially a can't versus a won't. So then we come to skills. So on the topic of potentially cleaning a room, one skill that I often use from when my girls were little to this day is the 10-second tidy. So that's what I call it. However, it typically doesn't take actually more than 10 seconds. So when, my kids want something, which is quite often actually, can I have a drink? Can you drive me someplace? Can I have a friend over? Can you make me a snack? All the can yous that happen, to take those opportunities and say, sure, I can. I'd like you to pick up 5 things, or I'd like you to go get 3 cups out of your room and bring them down to the kitchen. A little task that I deem a 10-second tidy, in conjunction with when then. So when you do the couple things that I've just asked, then I will do the ask that you just gave me. So that helps to really break down some tasks that you're asking them to do into smaller tasks, right? Instead of maybe cleaning a whole room. I don't know about you, but I felt overwhelmed at times that I have a task to do and it's so big that the feeling of it being so big just overwhelms me. Like, I don't even know where to start, so I'm just not going to start. And our young ones can feel the same feeling. I need you to clean my room. I need you to clean your room. Well, I don't even know where to start because it's so big. So how do we break down that task? It might be today, you know what? Let's go get all your dirty laundry off the floor and into your laundry basket. Come on, I'll help you. And we just do that part. Step 2 might be, okay, let's take all your clean laundry and fold it and put it back in your drawer. Let's go get all the dishes and bring them out. Eventually, through the day or 2 days, the room will be clean. The goal will be the same. But the task was now broken down into small, more manageable and doable tasks that, you can have them do or potentially do with them. So I feel like there's other situations I did it myself, gardening on the weekend. Oh my gosh, I have to do all this planting. You know what? Let's break it down to this flower in this garden and move on from there. So breaking down these big tasks into smaller tasks and doing it with them. Using the 10-second tidy to use situations where they're motivated, they want something. And so if they're asking you to make them a snack and you're asking them to, go around and pick up 5 things in the house or 10 things in the house that have been discarded while you're making the snack, they're going to be more likely to do those things that you're asking them because they're wanting something from you. And then it's important to, identify their emotions. And as Nikki was saying, scenarios with her children over the years, when things are, when emotions are happening, when behaviors potentially are getting bigger, and behaviors are language, we might want to just stop and ask, oh, are you having a big feeling? Let's look at this feeling and talk about it and sit with it for a few minutes.
One of the things that I've really found to be helpful in that area of identifying emotions is when we label our own emotions or help them and give them language to label emotions. It really helps them to understand the distinctions and recognizing that it isn't just one emotion that they are feeling in that particular moment. So oftentimes we think, mad, glad, sad, bad, those are kind of the 4 categories of emotions, but those don't tell us anything. And I love how, Kelly, you said that earlier. It's like, I'm not sad, I'm frustrated. And what we did is we broke that kind of bigger category down into more specific language around labeling our emotions. And the more specific we can get about our emotions and the more vocabulary our young people have to describe the things they feel, the more they're able to look at the things they're feeling and recognizing there are many potentially emotions in this moment that they're feeling. I feel frustrated. I feel unlistened to. I feel embarrassed. I feel angry. So there's some of those elements, and it helps to, as soon as we put a name on it, it actually helps it to bring it from a sense of identity into a sense of agency. So I can move from I am angry to I feel frustrated. And it puts a little bit of distance between us and the feeling, and actually aids in the ability for the physiology to start calming down, for us to start feeling a little bit separated and maybe even powerful over the emotions that we're dealing with. And so that is really powerful insights. And so when it comes to supporting parents of youth, Kelly, like, what are some things that we can do to help caregivers? Because this is, so much, like, I recognize from my own journey how alone I felt as a caregiver, and I would put all of my own needs aside to ensure that I was caring for my young person. But caring for that caregiver is really important. And Kelly, what are some of the things that are helpful in this?
Yeah, so when somebody in a family is struggling, the entire family is impacted. So one of the things that's happening, and it depends on the level of struggle. I mean, sometimes things are in a pure crisis, and sometimes things are overwhelming and not yet in that crisis. And I feel like raising kids and being involved is already overwhelming. You're trying to work, you're trying to, take care of the tasks in the home and, the emotional well-being of your children in the same situation. And what happens, and I don't know if it's happened to you, but sometimes as parents of youth who are struggling, we might get decision fatigue. And so, if I have to make one more decision, I've made a million decisions at work all day long. And then I have to, make appointments and drive people and get the kids here and there. And making another decision just feels impossible. And so to support parents of youth struggling, taking away that opportunity to have to make another decision can just be so valuable. So instead of saying something like, hey, listen, I'm here if you need me, call me if there's anything I can do, they're not going to call you because it's to think up what something they can do for me in that moment might just be too much of an ask at that point. So saying,
Excuse
listen,
me, please
yes,
wrap up your presentation. 2 minutes remaining. Thank you.
perfect. So to say something specific like, I'm going to Costco and am picking up some milk and bread. When can I drop it off? I'm making dinner. I'm making dinner on Thursday. What time can I drop it off for you? So having some very specific supports, supporting siblings, helping with drop-offs and pickups, calling and checking in, listening to your loved one in that same validating way with your three becauses, to the adults, to the parents, letting them vent without judgment, or trying to fix it or comparing it to maybe when they were young. Notice some dynamics at family gatherings, making sure they always feel loved and included. And don't dismiss those feelings of feeling overwhelmed or unsure of those next steps.
So we've given you lots of information, and I thought it would be fun to make something easy for us to remember. And I always love finding a 4-leaf clover. And so we have a lovely acronym to help us remember some of those key pieces. So C is connect, rather than correct, just really connect. L, listen. O, offer specific help. V, validate, because, just like Kelly described. Extend your support to family members and routines, finding those rhythms, that 10-second tidy, the lucky clover ideas that help us stay connected and offering support to our youth and our young people. And so as we wrap up, I just want to make sure that you are aware of those crisis phone numbers to put in your phone. So Woodview is for children and youth and their families. St. Leonard's is for the adults in your world or anyone who's in crisis. They're available 24/7, 365. And Contact Brand also has a wealth of resources that they can connect you to in the city. So our extensions at Woodview are there as well. Kelly is extension 140, myself at extension 149. And if you want to give us a call at any time, we would be happy to connect you with services or support you in whatever you need. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to be here, and it's been an honor to serve you today.
Kelly,